West-Moynes, Georgian's proud president and CEO. Welcome to our Big Data Conference. A special warm welcome to Zach Einstein from Salesforce, to David Kim from Massive Insights, to Brendan Beasley from Softserve, and to all of our incredible employers, event sponsors, and participants. We really would not be able to do this type of an event without you. A huge thank you to Sophia Kelman and the rest of our student organizers, some who I have had the opportunity to meet as we've got together to get ready for this part of the conference. I can tell you they've put together a terrific event, and I'm sure you're in store for a fantastic learning and engaging experience. You're going to hear from industry representatives and panel experts today. Big data opportunities are exploding in every sector, from consulting and data analysis to manufacturing, entertainment, and legal and contractual analysis. And of course, your own college has just launched a digital innovation initiative, and we know big data is going to be so important to our ability to serve students better. This is such an exciting field. If I was only 30 years younger, I think I'd be going back to school and trying to get more involved. Georgian's Big Data Analytics program is designed to ensure that our graduates have the right mix of technical, business, and communication skills. This isn't easy because these are hard things to put together. But because of that integrated skill set that our students are learning, we know they continue to be in high demand and will be off to great jobs once they graduate. It's safe to say that big data is only going to evolve and grow, and students here will be well positioned for an exciting and meaningful career. I like to think of big data as telling the story behind the information. We have access to more data than ever before, but we all know that data is simply meaningless if we don't understand it or we don't know how to use it. We can rely on big data every day here at Georgian. It's helping us to make informed decisions about the programs we offer, quality and uses of services, general operations, and overall student experience. It also helps to identify challenges and opportunities, predicts trends, and gives us better insight to the needs of our students, graduates, donors, industry partners, and the community at large. And as I said, we're on this exciting journey to do more. Stay tuned to learn how your college will in fact improve at the career that you're looking to engage in. Today's an opportunity for you to network, share experience and best practices, industry trends, and to learn how to use data to drive business results. I'm sure there will be a few takeaways you can apply to your own life too. Enjoy the conference, and thank you so much for including me.
Thank you, Dr. MaryLynn West-Moynes, for gracing us with your presence and also for reminding us of how relevant big data is. To further elaborate on what to expect on this year's conference, I would like to introduce Georgian College's Big Data Analytics Program Coordinator, Professor Chris Dick, for his opening address.
Well, thanks very much, Janina. Thank you very much, MaryLynn. We always appreciate you opening this April version of our conference. This being our first return over the last year to this conference, it's always a great event for us, and we're very excited to talk about our students and get everybody to start mixing it up about big data. The Big Data Insights Conference started in 2016, and it's a conference that has grown to be quite successful for our big data students, and we're very happy to run it every semester. It's an exciting day for me as it is for the students, and we hope this will continue to grow in its success going forward in 2021. So the Big Data program, it's a program that we started in 2016. We started with a small group of students, of about 30 students, and we now graduate close to 300 students per year. We're very proud of the students that we have. We have some really impressive people that come to our program. And essentially what we focus on is, data visualizations, understanding future patterns, and linking information in meaningful ways. We want the students to understand that data has deeper insights that can be garnered from it. And of course, we want to also help them understand that the people who are asking for that information need to make informed decisions. So there's a enterprise component to this that is very important. And as we develop the program, we start to learn. And of course, we go out to our community partners who also tell us, here's what I mostly need from the data that we collect. So as we think about how our students learn to curate and manipulate the data encoding that we work with, we also employ new tactics into the classroom that allow them to be most current. The things that we focus on, originally in 2016, we focused on the 3 V's of big data, which is volume, variety, and velocity. We now have new 3 V's that are also very important: veracity, value, and virtue. These 6 V's comprise the studies that we have in our big data program. And we feel that we've been very successful in employing that. Our major research projects are becoming much more sophisticated with every semester. And as we grow, our partnerships become equally as sophisticated. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. So our big data program comprises real world challenges, and this is our projects where we work with real world partners. You'll see a few of them talk today. We're very proud that we are able to offer these opportunities to our students. They gain experience out of this that is very important, because most of the time in big data, it's very difficult to have the opportunity to work with something that is real world and gain that experience hands-on. They also learn to visualize data. We use our partnerships with Microsoft and Power BI and Tableau. Very important courses. Bringing that data to life means a great deal when it comes to presenting the information that we're working with. The business and enterprise analytics, equally as important. This is what we talk about when we speak of our stakeholders who are also trying to understand what's the value in the information that we collect? How do we gain more information from it and insights out of it? The predictive analytics and machine learning is equally important, very, very key to the future success of companies. And our students gain this knowledge in many of our courses and apply it throughout. So when we think about our 12 courses that we teach, we have a focus on 3 sections. We have analytics, technology, and project management. We also teach about 40 tools, and that tool list ebbs and flows with the current trends in big data. So we're proud to say that we have partners that are ever evolving here as well. Going along with the 3 tiers of the program, the students learn data manipulation, mathematics, the data visualizations, business intelligence, and enterprise analytics. These are very important classes to allow for our students to understand how the information they are mining relates to the business. The technology side, we have a considerable group of technology classes here that employ techniques that we don't see very often in every program if we look around college groups. In our project management side, this is a very important side, because this is where our students learn how to work in a business environment and develop projects that are related to big data. Now, these projects are very important to us, so I'm going to talk about that shortly. Major research projects, the best way to groom and train employment candidates. It offers an opportunity for businesses of all sizes, from startups to corporations and enterprises, to develop a group of students. We generally have up to 3 students per project. And this offers the students, as I say, it's a real world opportunity to work to solve community problems. We partner with businesses to solve problems that may otherwise be financially out of reach or too time consuming for in-house teams to handle. Our students will work with you to define requirements, design, develop, and test, and release your solution to a beta test environment. They are also asked to think about a realistic budget for the project. So this is also very important on the financial side of the project. They present that throughout the project, and we feel that's a very important skill to have. We have a lot of different types of projects. This is a very short list of projects that we work with, but we look at data analytics, software development, artificial artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data systems. So whether you're just looking at analyzing data to building a website, to making predictive analytics, to machine learning, and even data systems, setting up data systems using the current platforms like Microsoft Azure, Amazon AWS, GCP, virtual machines, data lakes, Hadoop, Spark, all the names that you would traditionally hear if you're in this world. So our students are trained to do this, and this is very important to note because we feel that they are heading into the work world with the fundamentals that they need to succeed. Some of our partners, and you're going to see some of them today, we have Massive Insights and Softserve today who are here to work with us. These are people who are on our board of advisors. We have the City of Barrie, Napoleon, ProServe IT, and many BDAT alumni. Microsoft has a great foundation with us with their Canada Skills programs. We're very proud to announce that we'll be employing a lot of the certifications that Microsoft has to offer. So that's something really big that's coming up for big data and the college at large. Here's a group of our partners, still a fairly short list. Over the time, we've worked with literally hundreds of companies, and we're very proud to say that we have successfully completed many projects with so many of these companies, and they're really interesting projects. We're moving into some really key points where our students are really being immersed in the culture of a company as well. Some of our partners will send laptop where the students work directly with their systems. They're fully engaged as employees. So it's a very fascinating time for us to watch the evolution of our partnerships. So if you'd like to partner with our program, please do feel free to contact me. Now, I'm going to get Sophie Kelman, who has done such a wonderful job at building this conference, to talk about our students. She has done some data mining on data we've collected over the last many months.
Thank you very much, Chris. Georgian's BDAT student body envelops a diverse group of individuals. So each individual comes with a different background, personality, interests, motivations. And we wanted to give you a glimpse into who we are. Thanks to Gordon, we can start with a snapshot of our participants, starting with fall 2019. And we're just going to give a quick look at the class sizes, the geographical breakdown, gender, and educational background of our student body. I wanted to give a shout out to Zach Eisenstein from Salesforce. These visualizations were all done by Tableau, which, as many of you know, is now part of the Salesforce offering. So thank you, Zach, for all your help and support. And as you can see, it's pretty clear that the 2020 winter group of students was our largest student body. That was January of last year. So 2019 fall, we had about 63 students. This rose to 115 in 2020, but you can see very clearly the impact that the global crisis, how that affected the program. Falling to the red in the summer, our numbers started to rise again subsequently. And now we're back up to 98 students in the January 2021 enrollment. So in terms of the gender composition, overall, if you just take all the students who participated in the program from fall 2019 through the present, there were 370 students. 98 of these, or about 26%, were female. And I'm not going to give you the numbers, but take a look at how the green shifts over time. You notice it got pretty large. It becomes smaller. In the fall of last year, September 2020, the female composition rose to about 37%. And in January, we still have a strong female offering, but that is now down to about 6%. Over those 5 semesters, the female body is about 26%, or just over 1/4 of the student body. I think it's interesting to see how many countries are represented by this program, because it helps us to understand the wide reach and depth of the program and the far-reaching implications that this training can have around the world. So these are some of the countries that are represented in the program now or through over the past couple years. And we're just going to see how that shifts. But notice India has our highest representation at 236 between fall of 2019 to present. And this shifts over time, but some countries you'll notice are pretty steady in having a student representation. This is where we are today. We have students from Turkey, Iran, India, Nepal, China, Russia, Brazil, Nigeria, Australia, pretty much all over the world. One other thing we wanted to point out is that the backgrounds and the usages of this program are immense. So while the bulk of the students have a bachelor's degree in science or technology or engineering, there are many students with more advanced degrees, masters, and PhDs who have come through the program throughout the years because of the breadth of the program, but also because of the multifaceted applications of this program. I think that should give a pretty good idea of who we are, where we come from, what some of our interests are. And I wanted to say that despite all the challenges that we have all endured over the past year, summer 2020 was definitely a turning point. Personally, I'm really grateful for the privilege of getting to work with this phenomenal group of students, alumni, and faculty. My team, in particular, the team who worked together to get this conference organized. I just want to thank all of you, Chris and Osahan, for those late night never-ending updates and changes and all that. You will probably not see Lakshmi and Shivansh, but without them, the student showcase would not have existed. And then there is also Ankit and Piyush, Prerna, Thekla, those who have either given input or have helped in so many ways that you probably may never realize. Of course, Osahan and Janina, they did an amazing job with much of the marketing material that you have seen. Janina is our MC today, but she also brought her creative mind to this entire conference, bringing to life those posts and images, many of which were initially generated through the marketing department. She put her own creative spin on them. One person who's not part of our student team that I really want to thank, Emma Jameson. She works with the Georgian marketing department, and she became one of us. She worked those long hours and guided us through that entire Georgian College marketing branding process. So thank you, Emma. Thank you, team. Thank you, Mira and the RISE team. Thank you, Chris. Thank you to our guests and our friends for supporting us. And of course, a big thank you to Zach, David, and Brendan for your participation and support today.
Well, thanks so much for that, Sophie. That was an excellent overview. I don't think I could have done it better myself. So very well done. And you wanted to do it and you got it. So thank you. It's always amazing for me to see this program grow and where we end up and seeing how our students come up with great ideas to develop this conference ever more. I believe that would be it for us, but we're moving on to Bright and Janina again for moving on to our next group of speakers, right?
That's correct, Chris. Thank you so much for the insightful opening address, Professor Chris, and of course, Sophie, especially on how much you've highlighted the fact that we've done so much innovation and partnerships for this program. So I guess the question now that we would like to throw to our audience would be, since it's already a fact that big data is continuously growing, why do you think people are so drawn to this industry of big data analytics? So maybe you can share your thoughts through our comment section. Let's have a conversation and let's stir up some interesting ideas out there. Thank you. Let's proceed. One of the focuses of this conference is to highlight best industry practices from experts. In line with this, today's keynote speaker is a leading expert from Softserve. Allow me to welcome Softserve's Regional Sales Director with over 20 years of professional sales experience and currently handling the Eastern Canadian region, Mr. Brandon Beasley.
Great. Thank you, Janina. I appreciate it. First off, welcome and thank you for joining today. I'm Brendan Beasley. I lead business development for Softserve here in Canada. And I wanted to say how just grateful I am to be here. And for those of you who don't know us, Softserve is a global provider of IT services and a very enthusiastic partner to Georgian College and a sponsor for today's amazing Big Data Insights conference. Before I start, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the challenge that COVID has presented in our lives. It has changed many things, and it will change many more, not the least of which is the limits it imposes on how we socialize and how we interact. Social distance is now a term in our popular vernacular, but despite these challenges, this talented group at Georgian has managed to leverage technology in a way where we can interact, socialize, and hopefully learn. So a big round of applause should go to Chris, Mira, Kat, Sophia, Cecilia, and others who have worked extremely hard putting this wonderful day together. And one more thing, we are happy to field questions today. Put your messages in the chat and we will answer them after the session. Today, I'd like to speak about some of the major trends in big data security as we navigate through the COVID crisis, and hopefully give you some ideas about what these trends mean to future leaders like yourselves. Softserve has been in business for over 20 years. We are a global company, and as you can see, security forms a very important pillar to our critical services center of excellence. And my aim is to bring you the learnings from our centers of excellence and findings and insights from the thousands of clients we have from across the world. So with that in mind, let's take a look at what's happening in the world, shall we? I'd love to tell you that COVID has rallied the world around digital security and threat prevention, but in general, it's not. Governments and healthcare have had a preoccupation, understandably so, with keeping our physical selves safe. And many companies are trying to transform their traditional brick and mortar business models to digital ones, simply in order to survive. So in general, the security stance across the major enterprises in the world tends to be not so good. But why is that? There's many reasons, but I think a lot of it comes down to human nature. And I think the quote below by Lee Iacocca still rings true today. The example I'll give you is, how many of you chose the car you drive based on the number of airbags it has? How many of you chose the car that you drive based on the stopping power of the brakes? There's probably a few out there that are safety conscious, but probably not that many. And it tends to be the same for security. Do we as consumers really think about security when we buy our goods, or when we choose that shiny app that we want to download? In fact, 2020 study by Deloitte showed that over 70% of consumers surveyed said they did not know which consumer product companies best protected their personal information. It's very telling, isn't it? But things are changing. And we believe customers are slowly starting to expect more, particularly when it comes to medical information that's very personal. We have all heard talk about COVID passports in order to travel. And one could see how these passports, particularly if they start to house even more personal information, will change our relationship to online service providers. Let me also share what's new coming out of the COVID era. Over the past year, none of this is going to be a surprise to any of you, but companies have shifted a significant portion of their workforce to remote workspaces, which of course brings new challenges in data security. Also, companies are moving more of their business processes online, and in many cases, not fully understanding the security implications, in many instances too, utilizing their old security approaches and practices. Most telling, the major threats still come from insiders, and that, of course, is more of a threat now than ever before. Finally, another major trend that we're seeing in the market is that our governments have not fully understood this new paradigm themselves, but also they are hesitant to impede the growth of a global economy that's already flattened by COVID. And thus, they themselves have brought forth few policies that can proactively close the security gap. As you can see, there is much work to do across the board as it relates to data security to keep the wolves at bay. But that begs an interesting question. Who are the wolves? So let's take a look at who they are. So who is the typical cyber thief? It used to be individuals. Maybe they were bored, maybe looking for a challenge with nothing else to do on a Friday night. But again, things have changed. Cyber theft is now mainly perpetrated in earnest by rogue states and organized criminal enterprises. And they bring massive amounts of people, massive amounts of technical resources, and lots of time to work and find vulnerabilities in enterprise ecosystems. But that also now begs the question, it's a lot of effort, time, and money. Why would they expend so much time and energy? The simple reason is because personal information, competitive information, and customer data, it's in very high demand because it's very valuable. But how do they do it? Let's take a look at what you could say is a typical breach. A typical breach has effectively 3 steps. You would be inclined to think that a typical breach is more of a technical thing or a technical exploit. Just like in the movies, you might have seen a smart hacker finds a hole in the code that they slip through. But these days, the hole in the perimeter is not found through technical means, it's found through social means or social engineering. For example, we've definitely seen these examples in our history across our landscape. If someone could be impersonating your own company's help desk, they may call you and they may trick you into giving them your sign-on credentials. And now, of course, they can operate with your credentials from inside of the network. From there, they can work to establish what's called an advanced persistent threat, or an APT. And like a silent observer, that APT sits in stealth mode and waits to find valuable information that hackers can profit from. And once they take it, they try to sell it or encrypt it and then try to extort you for it. Imagine your company had spent hundreds of millions of dollars trying to develop a cutting-edge product, only to have the technical plans stolen. And now imagine that those plans are being held for ransom with the threat that it will be released online should you not pay. More recently, personal information from Facebook was hacked and dumped online. I think many of you have probably seen that. And if it happens that you were one of, I believe, over 500 million people, your identity could be at risk to those who may wish it for nefarious purposes. Okay, now that I've hopefully provided you with a backdrop of where we are at from an industry perspective, let me leave you with a quick summary of what this all means, but more importantly, as future leaders, what this means for you and your career and your lives. Again, in summary, as we spoke about, enterprises in general tend to be relatively unprepared, and many are focused on survival in the COVID age. They're not thinking necessarily about the big picture around security. As well, as we all know and have experienced, we've seen a huge shift in remote working, and that presents additional challenges to help secure enterprise networks. I think thirdly, the nature of the bad actors, they become more organized, they've got tons of resources, they are well armed and very, very focused. Fourthly, the role of the government, which today probably has been a little bit more laissez-faire, they are more likely to be involved in security and privacy regulation as we are seeing consumers are starting to demand it. The message I want to leave with you is that at the end of the day, this can be fixed. As future leaders, you will go out in the world armed with great brains and a fantastic Georgian education, and you will all play a role in building that big future of big data. And the first thing you should know is that after all I've described, this can be changed for the better. Firstly, I want you to think about the Spider-Man adage, with great power comes great responsibility. As you make your way in the world, look for ways to build the next generation of big data platforms that are both effective and secure as well. The second thing is insist on change. Change is a matter of the will, and desiring to do better is the first step. Don't accept the status quo. And lastly, dream about a better, more secure big data future. Please enjoy your day today. Learn as much as you can as you ponder the world of big security, big data, and your role in it. And so before I go, I will leave you with this quote. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Thank you again. Have a great session, and I thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much, Brendan, for providing us with insights regarding security challenges in the time of COVID and even in general, and how important change is. So again, thank you so much, Brendan, and also Softserve for being a partner with Big Data Insights Conference for years now. So for everyone, our participants, we will be right back. Stay tuned because we have the industry experts panel.
Will be sharing some unique insights into foreseeable trends, talent gaps, and more in the big data space. Our experts from key sector of consulting, manufacturing, sales, and client relationship management, with representative from Salesforce, Objection Code, massive insight. Firstly, I would like us to turn our attention to one of the first representatives. He's an account executive at Salesforce. Please welcome Zach Eisenstein. You are a key player in Salesforce, but I would like to ask you, how long have you been at Salesforce?
I have been at Salesforce since 2012.
That's about a decade now.
I was born and raised.
What should we expect from Salesforce? What are the new products the industry should expect?
I'd love to just give a quick introduction and thank you. So I'm Zach Eisenstein. I've been with Salesforce for quite some time now, since 2012. I'm based in Toronto. Thank you for the opportunity, by the way. And whoever's listening, it's great to have you here. And I hope today inspires you. You've got some great speakers. Just to give you a bit of background on kind of who we are and who I am, we all want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. You know, we only live once and we only get one shot to do it right. And talking about my story a little bit, I didn't realize what I was joining when my brother-in-law's best friend said that there was an opening at Salesforce a few years ago, but I'm grateful for the journey and where I am today because I work for a company that gives you opportunities to put your stamp on the world and make connections and make a real true impact. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about when it comes to Salesforce today. And when we think about the new products and the innovation, it's really about connecting with the state of the world and how our products are able to find solutions to those problems. I think about COVID-19 right now and what we're doing to make vaccine management rollout a bit more efficient and effective. And one of the products we've rolled out is Vaccine Cloud, which is an entire suite of solutions to help governmental organizations, companies, educational institutions adapt to the new world that we're in and roll out that vaccine management and that back to work, back to school type culture. So to answer your question, Bray, it's really innovation in the current state of the world, and vaccine management is one of those pieces.
Thank you very much. I would like to hear from Curtis Boyd, the founder of Objection Co. Do you think you are prepared for the changes around the flexibility of today's world? Changes now with COVID-19, work from home technologies are changing to try to fit into the current environment and world that we are today. So I'm asking, how do you think Objection Co is getting along and preparing for that?
Sure. You know, we've actually always been a remote team. So even when COVID hit, it didn't really impact us from a work point of view, because all of us worked from home initially. We had some people on our sales team who, you know, certainly visited our prospects and our customers left, but the only real change for us was managing our sales team and what software sales looks like in the COVID age, right? But it really didn't change that much, because for our team we were mostly remote. COVID has certainly done a lot of things within the software industry and in our industry, which is online reputation. A little background: 9 years ago, I was a nursing student cleaning patients. I was a nursing assistant. I figured out how to remove a bad review for a doctor, and I ended up starting a reputation management consulting practice, going back to school to learn how to code, building a SaaS company, a software company, getting to our first 1,000 customers, and then going back to school again to learn artificial intelligence and machine learning, and doing more research on how to identify various data sets and data points that can help make amazing predictions in review fraud, and starting to work with the government. For us, in online reputation, COVID has really impacted us because there are a lot less word of mouth referrals, right? More consumers and more people are turning online to reviews to get that sense of confidence they need in order to make a decision, because people aren't talking nearly as much as they used to. So for us, we've been a lot busier because of COVID, and as a result, it's only allowed us to continue our growth.
Thank you very much. It's now time to hear from Mr. David Kim. He's the Chief Executive Officer at Massive Insights. David, I read a little bit about your profile. The first line here tells me that you've spent over 20 years in this industry. So I would like you to share with us 20 years ago data analytics versus the present day data analytics. Can you run us through that journey?
Sure, Bright. Yeah, just to jump in, really pleased to be here and grateful for my co-panelists. They seem to have like amazing backgrounds, and we have a lot of synergies around the way we see the world in data analytics. Back 20 years ago, we used sticks and stones and paper mache to build analytic. No, I'm just kidding. I'll give you a quick introduction to my background. I started in a pretty small company and fell into marketing and data. That combination of marketing and data seemed to suit my personality. It was creative and yet scientific. It had a lot of freedom of expression, but you could really get into the quantitative facts and measures. I joined a fairly progressive analytics organization called LoyaltyOne, and that's where I really started learning my craft. Grew up in a data analytics environment, got the pleasure of working agency side with a global multinational company that did a lot of direct marketing and one-to-one marketing, and sunk my teeth into the idea of personalization and really using data to generate relevant offers and through the right channels and timing and whatnot. From there, had a pleasure of working in a bit more of the digital marketing space in healthcare with another organization building out the decision sciences practice, where we leveraged advanced models and really took the prediction to that next level. The last 8/9 years, I co-founded my own company, professional services organization in data analytics. And I've had the pleasure of working with Georgian College and meeting the bright, excuse the pun, minds of students that come to the college. The perspective of what's changed in 20 years, really quickly, a lot of it hasn't changed, and there's a ton of massive innovation. So some of the fundamentals of having clean data, being able to structure it, house it, and start analyzing it, those principles are much older than myself. I think what's really exciting nowadays is the speed in which you can do something. With the onset of cloud, with the new technologies and machine learning, with the rapid iterations that happen nowadays, it's just at a lightning kind of speed. And so that's the main thing that has changed. There are some new fundamental principles as well that have been added and layered into some of the traditional models that are making things super exciting. So the sky is certainly not the limit with products like Salesforce and with innovative companies like the one that Curtis has founded. There's just so much potential and opportunity out there in the marketplace.
Oh, interesting. Thanks so much. I really appreciate that. That was insightful. And I hope that there will be more interesting things along your career. I would like to ask, and this has to do with skill set of today. Do you think that present skill set is sufficient to handle the current data analytics issues or even the one to come in the future? Your response will be very critical for Georgian College.
Georgian has done a phenomenal job outlining some of the fundamental principles and courses and having a practical experience to learning those. It's just really the start of your journey in your career. You're going to get exposed in the real world to items that just haven't even existed. That's the pace of change right now. Some of the skill sets that are a bit more soft in nature is the ability to adapt, learn quickly, pivot, see the next opportunities and new products that are coming into the marketplace, and start incorporating that. Overall, I've had the pleasure of actually engaging and hiring students from Georgian, and they certainly have a lot of passion and excitement, which I don't know if that can be taught, but it's certainly nurtured well in the college. I'd augment that with just be humble, be truthful. If you've learned something for the first time, if you position yourself as an expert, that might be a little bit of a misstep because there's just much more to learn. You know, experts that have been doing this for as long as I have an appreciation for what we don't know, and it's quite a bit. Bring your curiosity. I think that's something that's intangible that certainly employers will value. Folks that have the technical background and skill sets, ability to learn, and are just curious about things. It's a nice combination.
Thank you very much, David. I'll quickly turn to Zach once again. I know that the number of years you spent at Salesforce, you tell the story about Salesforce. So can you tell us more about the corporate culture, what it's like at Salesforce?
The culture is everything, right? That's the truth. It's the hidden gem and it's the secret sauce. Because at the end of the day, what we do is we work with so many different kinds of companies and we try to solve their problems, and we talk business, and we take this data, but there's a human element to it. You got to apply that in everything you do. And I think those that do are successful. And the one piece of advice I give to everyone is to keep it human and be yourself, no matter what you do, and the success will come. The one thing that Salesforce does really well at, I could be on this panel for hours. I'm not going to even talk about the product. I'm just going to talk about how you connect with people. And when you put your customers at the center of everything, I manage our higher ed business across Canada. And I work with Georgian College, and we put the student at the center of everything we do. And when we do that, it kind of builds off that, the success of the relationship, because we're using that data to make informed decisions and help the institution make better decisions with that data and create better experience. And when you have that culture in Salesforce, like you asked, togetherness, passion, our core values are trust, innovation, customer success, and equality. And I truly believe that we live by that. Our CEO's Mark Benioff, his vision, he says the purpose of business is to improve the state of the world. Not anywhere did you hear about product or data, but it's with that data where you find success and you're able to make better decisions for your organization. That's what we preach.
Thank you very much, Zach. I think with these few lines, it looks like I should start packing my bags and head into a Salesforce.
There is something called the Salesforce economy, right? Which we can talk about. Right. And it really is amazing for students who are in the program, in the big data program, and who absorb the innovations of Salesforce and use that to skill up and join this amazing Salesforce ecosystem. So we're really proud of all the students that have graduated and joined Salesforce.
Oh, that's great. Curtis, I'll just quickly ask you to share some insight. I see that you built a technology that identified fake news. And this is not like you read about it, you built it. That's a big one. Is that a recent development? Is this something that you identified along with the trend, or is being part of you right from day one?
Sure, that's a great question. So just to specify, our technology is built to detect fake reviews on review websites like Google, Yelp, TripAdvisor. It certainly could be applied to news, like on publications, but right now it's very narrowly focused for online reviews. And I would say that it's just been an evolution of my career and my prioritizations. When I first started, it was about identifying reviews that were illegitimate for business owners. My first one was a doctor, and what could you do, right? This doctor challenged me with a problem. Curtis, I have this review. I need help getting it removed. I can't solve it. My lawyer can't solve it. Can you help me, right? So at first it was just a consultancy role. then getting involved with software, having software fulfill on that service, on that fulfillment. And then what we noticed in regards to reviews and illegitimacy is that a majority of our marketplace on sites like Amazon, Google, the majority of fake illegitimate reviews aren't ones that impact business owners. They actually impact consumers. An overwhelming majority of fake online reviews are 5 stars meant to deceive consumers and give them false senses of confidence in order to sell, right? So that being said, about 1.5 years ago, almost 2 years ago, we started investing a lot of our revenues from our SaaS company into building a tech stack that could identify fake reviews. And it's been a long time coming, for us. And so we look at review content, and we create unique metrics based on reviewer content. And then we also look at reviewer profile behavior, user behavior that we can collect and measure and analyze. And then using various content and profile metrics, we get to plug it into much larger machine learning models to make predictions on the legitimacy of reviews, and then make a prediction for a business as a whole. It's certainly a lot of fun.
Oh, great. Thank you. I can say that that's another type of security around the web, because fake reviews, I can categorize that as part of cybersecurity issue. So thank you very much to our panel. With this technology, we might not be able to hear the round of applause from the 92 people, but on behalf of the team, I would say thank you very much, Zach, David, and Curtis. Thank you. I will see you around.
Yeah, our pleasure. Thank you.
Pleasure to
Thanks so much.
Thank you to all our industry representatives. We have Curtis, David, as well as Zach. Thank you so much for highlighting to us the importance of identifying challenges to understand your organization's purpose, as well as being able to adapt through innovation or simply by changing your organization's systems. Also, another thing that I realized while listening to them is that these are the concepts that we'd like to know of or be aware of, because we will be seeing more of these ones in the real world. Continuing on and keeping the insights flowing, help me welcome Ola Butchell for a special address about geospatial analytics of communities in today's context.
Today I will talk about geospatial analytics of mobile communities today and beyond. Before I move on to my presentation, let me explain you about mobility data. Many of you probably think about mobility data as transportation data. While it's true that it's one type of mobility data, but we can find many other types of mobility data in social media platforms, especially in communication, in movements of people from one location to another location, in co-occurrent events in time and space, in mentions, in messages. Mobility data became very popular at the beginning of the pandemics in April of 2020. At that time, many companies like Google, Apple, Facebook, SafeGraph, Teralytic have shared mobility reports. They shared mobility reports in the form of a time series showing relative movements at certain locations, countries, counties, and cities. They showed this relative movement on maps, like Teralytic's map that you can see here. But there were some other companies that offered their geospatial data for analysis. One of such companies was SafeGraph Corporation, that offered several data sets, including social distancing and points of interest data sets. These data sets were analyzed and we computed communities from their data. Basically, their data was about relationships between different census block groups. Census block groups are one of small geospatial entities which are smaller than census tracts but a bit larger than the census blocks. We analyzed their data from January 19th to February 29th. These were 6 weeks before start of the pandemic, before any lockdowns, when people lived their normal lives. And what are the key insights that we've got from their data is people divide their world not into the way we know it, not into the states. Communities that they form, they are quite different from the border that each state has. They form natural boundaries of communities. On the previous map, we showed communities using dots, using central points of this census tracts. There were lots of limitations with that approach because it was hard to see many other relationships that is possible to discover in these geospatial networks. So we had to switch to polygon maps. Here, the top map, I'm showing you how we managed to place 3 layers of different networks on a single map. The maps at the bottom explain what these different layers of maps are. First of all, we have mega communities. Mega communities are shown in different colors. So purple color, blue color, pink color, yellow color, and gray color. Together, all these communities remind us probably of regions in the United States, except that here we are showing 5 regions and there are 4 regions in the United States. Besides this, you can also see the main communities. So these are the same communities that you saw in the previous slide, except they have slightly different colors to match the membership in the mega communities, so that the communities within the same mega community, they have similar hues. And finally, what you want to pay attention to in these maps are black lines within each community. These black lines represent sub-communities. We computed the sub-communities by taking each main community and looking at the relationships within each large communities. And we've got a number of sub-communities within the main community. And for the regions, we took only interrelationships among the main communities. For you to understand what a community is, I would like to show on the next slide that in a single community, you might have relationships that are inside the community and going outside of the community. The relationships inside the community are much stronger than the relationships that are going outside. Therefore, these inside relationships are forming a community. This is an example of the communities in Hawaii. You can see that together they form a community and sub-communities, but they have lots of relationships going outside of the communities. We examined multiple communities over time, and we were able to see that mega communities are slightly changing over time. Communities may change membership in the mega communities. For example, on the right, I'm showing here how Florida and Michigan are changing their membership in communities over time. Two maps that I showed generated with 1 year difference. But on the first map, Florida is together with Michigan and New York. On the second map, Florida is together with the Midwestern communities, but not with New York. Why this is happening? It's explainable by the flows of movements to and from Florida. On the first map, that was the time when the US was preparing for the lockdown. Many people have migrated from New York to Michigan, but at the same time, many students have traveled to Florida for spring break. On the second map, you can see that probably the movement between New York and Florida became weaker because there are still ongoing cases in New York. So the movement between Michigan and other Midwestern states became stronger. That's why they changed the membership. Besides the different layers of communities that I already explained, there are also many satellite communities on these maps. Satellite communities are communities which are separated from the main communities by a certain distance. Why this is happening? Because maybe people have traveled from one location to another location and they had lots of activities in that other location that they were able to form the so-called community. Besides this, there are many weak ties between the communities. So there are lots of commutes to and from the communities. On the one map, I'm showing relationship to a community in New York. And on another one, I'm showing from that community in New York. Although the communities are dynamic and they are changing their shapes over time, the changes in shapes are not very different. There are basically stable communities and there are parts which are subject to change over time. Most we observe changes in the areas where there are some parks or where there are some areas where people are not going regularly. Besides is I would like to show you how communities behave during the lockdown. In figure A, you can see how communities look in the San Francisco area in the Silicon Valley during normal weeks when there is no lockdown. In the figure B, you can see how they split into sub-communities when there is a lockdown. Basically, the movement reduces and people don't have to commute to work and they stay within their own communities. Finally, image C shows which companies are belonging to which community that probably explains the formation of these communities. They form a backbone for these communities. Besides this, if you look at the sub-communities we observed during the lockdown, they are very similar to the distribution of races and ethnic groups, and also income inequalities for which we use the census data. Movements between communities, when we map movements between the main communities, we may partially explain why these communities were formed and how they were formed and for what reason. Oftentimes, always can find explanations in newspapers about certain events happening causing this mobility. Getting the community is only a part of the story, because in order to analyze data, in order to put data into a different context, in order to put these communities into a context with your own data, it is important to merge the communities with other data that you are trying to analyze. In this example, I merged the data with COVID data. COVID data is usually reported at the level of counties in the US. For this map, I was able to calculate percentages that are going into these communities from the counties, and this way I was able to assign the time series of COVID for each community and sub-community. But in terms of COVID, all these communities play a role. They show where the optimized borders for travel bubbles should have been set in the United States. As you know, the travel bubbles in the United States existed, but many states were not sure what they were doing. The process was ad hoc. For all this analysis, I'm using Python, I'm using Mapbox.gl and D3 just to show the results. Besides looking at the values, comparing communities, it is also possible to use this mobility data between the communities and the models that are closer to the disciplines or to areas which you are trying to analyze the data. For example, in public health, there are lots of models like susceptible infectious recovered or susceptible exposed infectious recovered. These models have existed for a long time. They are still being used for analyze the diffusion or spread of diseases. However, what we are working on is on adding mobility and the patches, the communities, in order to understand how to optimize the lockdowns and how to optimize the process. At the end, I would like to add small cherry on the icing of the cake. I would like to show you the map of Twitter. Normally in Twitter, analyzing communities and things that they exist in some virtual abstract world. But here I'm showing you that basically it's possible to track the communities in a geographic space. And they form also mega communities and the sub-communities as people who walk one message to each other, or like they send messages on Twitter, mention each other's name. Remember, as I showed on slide 5 earlier, communities here in this particular example, the local relationships are much stronger than the relationships that are going outside. And therefore, we can see all these geospatial communities on Twitter. Where else these mobile communities can be applied? They can be applied to marketing, to public policies, to security analytics, business analytics, transportation analysis, smart cities, real estate analytics. I would like to acknowledge my collaborators on this project, Barrie, who is the president of the New England Complex Systems Institute, and Leila Hedayati-Farr, who is the principal investigator on this project, and generous supporter from NSF.
Thank you so much, Ola. It's actually refreshing to hear about geospatial analytics of communities to focus on the topic of mobility, especially in the context of the United States. So again, thank you, Ola, for giving us timely and a research-based insight regarding the findings and applications of the analytics of communication and social media. As you highlighted earlier, you used Twitter and communities in the context of lockdown. It's been a pleasure to see all the graphs. It's been amazing to hear what you've said about that topic. So thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me.
As one of the Big Data Analytics students, I am excited to introduce our next session, the Student Showcase. This portion of the conference gives us a snapshot of some data analytics program that students are currently involved in. Learn about the myriad ways that big data analysis is used in research and industry through our presenters.
So our first theme for today worked with SAIRYÖ live streaming. SAIRYÖ is a video production and creative music label in the process of developing a new international live streaming app. So this project aims to develop a content recommendation engine for a digital media platform. And the team members are Eric Steiner, Mehul Kumar Bhatt, and Srijan Kaki. So please let's hear their presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, RISE Conference. My name is Eric Steiner. I'm from Waterloo, Ontario, and it's my pleasure to be here today alongside my team to present our major research project, a content recommendations engine. You've just heard a brief introduction to SAIRYÖ and their new digital live streaming app, which is an excellent opportunity to capitalize on the machine learning technique known as content recommendations engines. Recommendations engines are extremely common in the digital media industry today and are used in everything from in-app content delivery, targeted internet ads, and new user profile creation. If trained effectively with an abundance of historical data, they are a powerful marketing and sales tool that can increase your user base and conversion or engagement rates. The technical core is the machine learning algorithm, and of course, the data that informs it. Popular examples include user-based filtering, like the Instagram Explore page, or item-focused filtering, common among streaming platforms like Netflix or YouTube. To make sure SAIRYÖ could capitalize on this powerful technique while circumventing common pitfalls like the cold start problem, user privacy risks, and high overhead costs, we established a set of metrics for success. First, our personalized recommendation solution must use geographic, demographic, and psychographic data. It must also be affordable and easily integratable within their application while maintaining the possibility to scale for big data. And finally, we must be able to illustrate the recommendation's effectiveness before implementing it with real user data. To achieve these goals, we identified Amazon Personalize as the premium third-party recommendations platform. AWS Personalize has many algorithm options available. It is designed for use with big data while offering scalable pricing options. And finally, SAIRYÖ is already utilizing the AWS stack, making integration effortless. While possessing one piece of the puzzle, a sophisticated machine learning algorithm such as AWS Personalize is incomplete without suitable data to train it. Therefore, given that geographic, demographic, and psychographic data and the unique structure collectible through SAIRYÖ's live streaming app was unavailable through third-party means, we developed a three-step solution. First, evaluate their ideal audience and cluster it into user personas. Transform the personas and stream information using a procedural data generator to simulate user behavior. And finally, use the output datasets to inform AWS Personalize and test the simulated personalized recommendations. Now I'll pass it off to Mehul to explain the first step of our solution.
Thank you so much, Eric, for giving such an interesting introduction to our presentation. Hello, everyone. My name is Mehul Kumar Bhatt. I'm from India, right now based in Toronto, Ontario. I have played a role of marketing specialist in this project. I continue my portion of this presentation with user personas and audience segments. Basically, user personas are fictional characters which you create based upon your research in order to represent the different user types that might use your services, product, site, or brand in a similar way. Audience segmentation is also kind of a process of dividing people into meaningful and manageable chunks or groups so that products and services as well as communication efforts are designed and tailored to satisfy the targeted groups. Our creation process behind creating this user personas and audience segments is not only limited to defining user personas characteristics, but also a lot of brainstorming sessions with our client SAIRYÖ and our program coordinator, Mr. Chris Dick. Finally, we are happy to create the nearest possible human version of the client's target market. Here you all can see the table that we have created on the basis of user personas of human version that we have created. These are the defined categories of our user personas, namely started with name, gender, age group, marital status, location, education, family income, live stream, trends, and content preferences. According to our client, live stream, trends, content, as well as location are the most important categories to feed into our data generator. Now, again, I hand over presentation to Eric Steiner for data generator part.
Thanks, Mehul. Using our understanding of SAIRYÖ's ideal audience from user personas, the next step is to pass it as an input to the procedural data generator to print simulated item, user, item, and interaction tables. Our data generator creates rows of users using probability and randomness before comparing user metadata with the simulated streams to determine a metric of probability we call the likeliness to interact. We intentionally designed the data generator to consider only the most relevant dimensions of human media consumption behavior and print user, item, and interaction dataset compatible with SAIRYÖ's real user data so that they could be combined over time. We can easily evaluate the output user base using dashboards such as this. From these initial results, we concluded that the demographic and content preferences are consistent with our best understanding of SAIRYÖ's actual audience. Now that we possess user, item, and interaction data that satisfy the minimum data requirements from AWS Personalize, include geographic, demographic, and psychographic data, and can be generated to sufficiently overcome the cold start problem, we are ready to move on to the final step of our solution. For this, I hand the presentation over to Srijan.
Hey guys, my name is Srijan Karki, originally from Kathmandu, Nepal, currently in Ottawa, Ontario, and for this project I assumed the role of lead developer. As Eric mentioned in the slides before, Personalize was the perfect fit for us, mainly because of the fact that the client already uses AWS for their current platform. Secondly, Personalize also provides us with a plethora of different machine learning algorithms with very easy implementation. And on top of that, Personalize provides us with an API to fetch all of the recommendations and easily integrate it with our client's platform. We completed a series of testing using their API to fine-tune the values so that the output recommendations were justified. As you can see on the sample image above, on the left, the items the users interacted with, and on the right, the recommendations output by our model. We validated these recommendations because of the fact that the recommendations matched the user's preferences. Furthermore, we can also see that the weight of geographic data, as though even the sample user is not from India, there are being recommended items having high geographical presence in our data set. I think it's safe to say that our model is working exactly how you want it to. Mind you, this is not the final product in itself. This product just opens up various different avenues that our client can take to move forward. I'd like to pass it back to Eric for his final thoughts.
Thanks, Srijan. Using simulated data to demonstrate recommendations effectiveness present unique opportunities for our client. In addition to being able to jumpstart personalized recommendations to new and existing users, deepening loyalty and engagement, the simulated data can be used to supplement real data over time in order to subtly influence the trained model to achieve marketing and branding goals. For example, as Srijan mentioned, a major focus of the SAIRYÖ app is on the geographic location. Therefore, we can easily simulate users with a local or national interest, characteristics which are clearly understood by AWS Personalize and will influence its recommendations. Thanks for watching our presentation. Huge thanks to the team, Georgian College, and of course, our client SAIRYÖ for their continued support. Good luck to everyone presenting this year.
Thank you very much, Eric, Mehul, and Srijan. That was an interesting one. Almost was thinking I was moderating the panel of experts again, but I'm very proud that this is coming from us today. The second set of students to showcase their project this afternoon is the team who worked with the Georgian College Human Services on remote learning survey. So the project explores how well students are adjusting to the online mode of delivery using an open-ended questionnaire and other relevant skills. So I present to you, ladies and gentlemen, Sol Moon, Andrew Jacobs, and Manoj Gotumukala.
Hi, my name is Sol, and today we'll be talking about the online self-regulatory learning strategy and students' well-being in remote learning environment. With COVID-19, a lot of universities, colleges, and all the other platforms have moved to remote learning, and it's being more popular to have everything online now. Our project looks into how well remote learning affects the student learning, especially with their mental health. We are looking into self-regulatory learning skills, which includes setting goals, having time management, and knowing where to go to seek for help. There are a few research that were done that looks into a relationship between psychological distress and academic achievement, and we're doing this project to further do a research on whether there are correlations. And with this, we can help students adjust better to remote learning platforms and to show which area they're struggling and how, as a college, can help students learn better with this special circumstance. And our goal is to use DAS21 and OSLQ24 scale that looks at students' mental health and remote learning skills performance, and open-ended questionnaire to see if there are correlations, how students are adjusting. And this will show if the students are feeling stressed, depressed or feeling anxiety, and to see if are there any resources out there that are helping the students, or if there anything that the school can provide to help with the situation. And so we have collected survey from 169 Georgian students and from online survey to see where they answered the questionnaire regarding the DAS scale, OSLQ, and open-ended questionnaire. And so we have cleaned the data so that any of the score with null values were removed, and the average scores were considered, the skills were measured in Likert scale. And for open-ended questionnaire, we use natural language processing algorithm, which allows us to do some sentiment analysis to see if the responses are positive, negative, or neutral. We can see which responses were most popular and analyze the open-ended question. And this is the result for the DAS 21. We can see a lot of people there's anxiety level, stress level, and depression level are pretty normal, but there are a significant number of extremely severe or severe cases. If you look at all the mild up to extremely severe, they all add up to around 50%, which is pretty significant. And if you see the chart here, you can see that there are a group of extremely severe and severe cases are pretty significant, even though they're not a lot, but there are students who are feeling quite stressed, and these numbers are significant. And now I'll hand it over to Andrew.
Hi, everyone. So these are the results of the latent analysis on OSLQ. OSLQ is basically the different self-regulatory learning skills such as environment structuring, time strategies, task management, help seeking, self-evaluation, and goal setting. Latent analysis, which was conducted on the M+ software, it's basically a statistical analysis method where it identifies 3 classes of students according to their mean performance in these learning skills that I talked about earlier. The software has identified 3 latent classes here. From the pie chart, we can see that 40% is in class 3, 13% is in class 1, and 48% is in class 2. And to know the difference between these classes, we can take a look at the graph and see how they have performed on each of the self-regulatory learning skills scores. Class 1 comparatively scores lower on these scales. Class 2 is higher, and class 3 score the highest in these learning skills scales. In the next slide, we see how this data has been paired with the depression, stress, and anxiety scales as well. So this is just a 3D graph which shows how the 3 different classes score in each of these segments, that is the learning skills and the depression, stress, anxiety scales. To get a better understanding between these self-regulated learning skills and the depression, stress, anxiety, that's the DAS data, we look at the next slide where we see a correlation map between these variables. And from the legend on the right, we can see that the darker that the color gets, the more negative the correlation between the 2 variables. So if we look at dark red portion in the graph, it basically shows the correlation between depression, stress, anxiety, and the self-regulatory learning skills. This basically means that the higher that you score for depression, stress, anxiety, the lower that you will score in your learning skills evaluation. Now, in the next slide, we'll see how we have analyzed the open-ended questions. These graphs were generated in Python, and we got the score for positive, negative, neutral using sentiment analysis, which has been done using the natural language processing toolkit in Python. For example, question 1, the graph basically says that there's more negative sentiment towards the first question than neutral or positive. Over this slide and the next slide, we can see how sentiment lies on all these questions. And basically, we can just make out that there's less positive sentiment towards these questions. The next slide shows an alternate method of how we have analyzed these questions. This dashboard shows the categories of the answers that students gave to the first question. So the first question is how the things in the remote learning environment contributed to their environment structuring. We read all the answers and we categorized them based on all the answers. And then we have come up with this dashboard, which also identified 3 classes using the K-mode cluster analysis algorithm. This is what we have come up with open-ended questions analysis. Coming to the conclusions, we can see that significant number of students are showing mental distress. The remote learning skills are not utilized very well, and students need more resources. From the open-ended questions, we come to know that many students are getting distracted in their homes because of the asynchronous learning part, and they find it difficult to keep up with the syllabus. Another big factor that happens is instructor miscommunication, where instructors knowingly or unknowingly end up confusing the students, which is not helpful for their studies. So thank you for listening to us and have a great day.
Thank you very much for that insightful project. Like I mentioned in the earlier one, it did look like a professional job. So I'm very comfortable that we are ready for the future and the industry. This team worked on the city of Barrie public Wi-Fi. The city captures data about devices that come within its range from the data that collected by these access points. It is interesting to know that this project is a joint venture between the IT department of Barrie and Georgian College Big Data program. So to be showcasing this project, we have Navin Selepan Sevaraju, we have Ron Vollis and Siddharth Sharma.
The project deals with collecting this data from the Wi-Fi network and storing them securely in a database. In Barrie Waterfront Park, we have a public Wi-Fi network, and the access points in the network capture data about these devices, like the number of people connected to the devices or the number of bytes of data consumed by the people connected to the devices. Our project hopes to utilize this data collected by the access points and use this data to improve local businesses and public services provided by the city. For instance, we can set up a local business at an area where most people gather at a particular time of the day, or we can look into the data, analyze where people were mostly during what time in the day at the park, and we can focus our public services on the particular area. This project is a joint venture between the city of Barrie IT Department and the Big Data program from Georgian College. Our project has this following goals. So first, we are going to build a RESTful API that will capture the data from the access points. Then after collecting the data, we'll model the data, analyze the data collected, and model the data using entity framework model. Using the EF model, we will set up a SQL database in Azure and encrypt to encrypt and store the collected data. Finally, after setting up the database, we will deploy the API using Azure App Services. These are the tools that we use to develop our application. We are using an ASP.NET Core to code the application, and we are using an entity framework core and ASP.NET Core to create a model for our data. Then we'll use Azure SQL database to store the data. Initially, we will be building a prototype for our project. In the prototype, we will use Azure Blob Service to the API to store the data. Since we don't know how the data will look like, we'll use Azure Blob Service to collect the data by the access points and save it securely in Blob Storage and analyze the data and create a model for the entity framework code. To secure the data, we'll be using AES encryption algorithm to encrypt the data collected and store it in the database in an encrypted format. Finally, we'll use Azure App Services to deploy the application into the internet. So this is the development process. First, we met with the client a number of times to deduce how we can implement this application. Initially, we get a documentation of the client's access Wi-Fi vendor, and we go through those documentation for a few days, and we deduce that an API connected to a SQL database would be a better way to implement the application. So after analyzing the documentation from the client, and we'll gather all the requirements that are needed for the project, we build a prototype using Azure Blob Storage, and the prototype is an API that collects the data from the access points and store them in the Azure Blob Storage instead of an SQL database, because at first we are not sure how the data will look like. So we need time to analyze the data and create a structure for the data. Blob Storage will get the data from the API and store it in a JSON format in the storage account. After we get the data, we analyze the data and create a model and structure for the data using entity framework, and we'll create another API that will be directly linked to the Azure SQL database. After creating both the Blob API with the Blob Storage and API with the SQL database, we make test cases for those API and test them using a Postman and some manual tested them using some test case scenarios. Then after testing and making sure the code is working perfectly right, we'll deploy the application using Azure App Services into the internet. Now my teammate Ron Wallace will describe the development process.
Thank you, Naveen. So my name is Ron Wallace. I was one of the developers for this project alongside Naveen. So for our prototype development, we deployed our API to Azure, where it would store the data coming in from the access points into blob storage. This way we could see what data is coming in, and that would let us create the SQL table schema to build a proper API where you can actually get data from it. So this is an example from our prototype. We had to modify a few characters in the incoming data to make it compatible with the JSON format. And there was a lot of data coming in. So we had to make sure that all that data coming in at once wouldn't crash the API. And over here is a snippet of what we were able to capture. We were able to use this data here to create an SQL table schema. So this is what it looks like in our website if you want to view the blob storage. If you'd click on these, you could download it and view the data inside. For our final product development, we were able to create the SQL table schema and be able to successfully encrypt the data and store it in the SQL database. And here's a look at the data in the SQL database and our model through our code. And this is just a view that we have in the API to view some of the data in a much more appealing format. And while we were testing it, we wrote several test cases to make sure that we were able to send data to the API and retrieve it, and also to make sure that anybody unauthorized who wasn't logged in and had an admin account was able to view the data. And here's a snippet of our test cases. We did face a couple challenges in this project. Firstly, we wanted to store all this data in the college's big data cluster, but unfortunately, Azure charges you a very high price to be able to connect to VPN connections. So we just had to store it on Azure SQL Server and only store a small amount of data at a time. And secondly, because of a transmission bug on the access point side, the location table for the actual devices would always come in null. So that's something that the vendor would probably have to take a look at on the access point. But otherwise, we were able to process and store the data that we were able to receive. So in conclusion, our API was able to capture data from these access points. We were able to store it encrypted in our SQL database. Our API is deployed on Azure. And once this transmission bug is fixed, the data collected can be used to better the city's public services and improve local businesses by analyzing where pedestrian traffic is concentrated at any given time. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time. And I would like to thank our client, Ryan Norton and Rob Emerson from the Barrie IT department. And I would like to thank Georgian College for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. And we would also like to thank you for the presentation. And this team work on the website launch for EcoGreen Interactive. The project entails incorporating trend analysis and ad hoc reporting into the website. So I have the team here: Falak Goda, Sucheta Karande, and Osahon Ihodaro.
Hello everyone, my name is Sucheta, and me and my team will be presenting our project we worked on for our client EcoGreen Interactive. I'll quickly go through the agenda. Our presentation is divided into 5 parts. I'll start by introducing my team, then a short brief about our client, and then our role in the project. Then the project architecture will be explained by Falak and what we've worked on, and then a short brief on our outcomes and learnings from the project. Me and my team, so we worked as data analysts in this project. I'm Sucheta. I hold a bachelor's degree in computer science and a master's degree in business administration, specialized in marketing and research. Falak here holds a bachelor's degree in economics and a master's degree in global business management. Osahun is an electrical electronics engineer and has a master's degree in information technology. Now, a brief about our client. Our client, the EcoGreen Interactive, is the parent company, which is a marketing firm that believes in providing platform to products and services which are sustainable and eco-friendly in nature. We Are Circular is a development as a subsidiary. The aim here is to develop a marketing brand that simplifies the sustainable message to inspire action by consumers. Now, talking about our role in the project, we are working on building an online collaborative directory with trend reporting, which would focus on giving recognition to businesses which support social and environmental purposes. The client wants us to incorporate the reporting and trend analytics into the website. This was achieved by implementing WordPress functionality into the website. We implemented HivePress Statistics, which is a plugin of WordPress, and Google Analytics for the same. As I mentioned, these are the tools which we used for our project. We used HivePress Statistics to understand the trend analytics. In this case, here each vendor can track the number of visitors he or she has on her listings. Next, we implemented Google Analytics to track the traffic on our website.
Thank you, Sucheta. This is the project architecture. This is a diagrammatic representation of what we need to show from our project. In middle, as we see, the entire project revolves around the website itself, that is EcoGreen Interactive. On the left-hand side, you see the onboarding phase of the consumers and vendors. whereas on the right-hand side, you see the sales of goods and services of the vendors and the consumers. The onboarding of the consumers and vendors is basically how a user goes and becomes a consumer and how a user goes and becomes a vendor. So for becoming a consumer, he has to register himself and he has to surf the website and get the details of whatever he wants. Whereas if a user wants to become a vendor, he has to create a listing, a category, and the work of the admin is to view the listing, and if the admin finds it according to the needful criteria, the admin can approve the listing and deny the listing. On the other hand, the sales of goods and services remains that the vendor creates and updates their listings as and when needed, whereas the consumer goes and surfs the website for the services of goods and services they're interested in. Proceeding forward, we have added some snapshots of the entire website. On the left-hand side, we see the landing page, the home page where we come to whenever we sign in and register ourselves on the website. We have 6 tabs which shows home, listings, vendors, about, my account, and add listing. Whereas on the left-hand side, we see the admin view of listing. What we do as a work of admin is to approve the listings which have been created by the vendor themselves and to take off the listings as and when needed or as and when the admin finds it faulty. The user view of listing remains the same, wherein the user goes to a selected category and can see a number of listings whenever they want some sort of services or goods from the listing page. The next is the snapshots in relation to the Google Analytics and HivePress statistics. The Google Analytics shows the exact work what we've been doing on this project. We have been capturing the data traffic of each of the web page and what listings has more attention of the users and views. So on the left hand side, we can see that through the Google Analytics snapshot, whereas on the right hand side, we see the HivePress statistics. That is the admin view of HivePress statistics, and it is in the website itself. We do not have to link that to Google Analytics. This is separate on the website, and the admin can see on what day what visitors came and view what listings for how many minutes. We even have the graphical representation of the same on the website itself. However, we were not able to attach a snapshot of the same because it was a long graph. This is the outcome and learning experience from this particular project. We initially started with a research on paid listings and claim listings, wherein we had an in-depth understanding of what paid listings and claim listings are actually. We decided to go forward and move along with the paid listing concept and inculcate that into our project. However, due to change of scope and not needing it right now after implementing the Google Analytics, we decided to not move forward with paid listings. However, the documentation of the same has been shared with the client herself. We had an in-depth understanding of how the backend process works and how to rectify the backend process. We were not able to have the admin notifications sometimes whenever the vendors created a new listing. However, we were able to rectify it. So we understood how to do that and how to rectify the problems related to the same. Out of this project scope, option was given to the client by the students to inculcate the e-commerce functionality and the understanding of what goes better with our project. We decided to move forward with the WooCommerce, which needs paid listings to be inculcated as well. However, due to a lack of time, we were not able to move forward with the same. What we understood was how to configure and implement the Google Analytics and HivePress into website itself. This was the main work what the team was focusing on. We had reports of the same and we were able to create and test the same successfully. We are able to test the data. However, the challenge is that the testing what we've been doing, we are not sure whether in the future the data challenge would be a problem or not. So that still remains the question. I would be concluding with a final evaluation that we have a hands-on experience with how to implement and configure the HivePress statistics and Google Analytics onto the website. We understand what Google Analytics features are, for example, demographics or behavioral, and how they add a value to the data trafficking and the data capturing, whatever we've been performing on. Our knowledge was exchanged on the professional working environment and challenges faced with a period which involves timely communicational or technical challenges. There were times where the team was not able to capture some data in a limited period of time. There was a communication gap and sometimes technical challenges because we were learning the hand of working together with the project. So that was one of the challenge which team faced. However, we learned how to professionally work on the same, and in-depth understanding about how to report the Google Analytics and hyper statistics was shared as well. We would like to thank all the faculty members who have given us this opportunity, and the client herself, Audrey Baynes, for giving us this incredible opportunity to work on this project. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Once again, we appreciate your time and that insightful presentation. I am very sure that your efforts over there will pay off later. So we have our last theme for this evening. The team worked on a cloud-based visualization app for objection code. Their task was to create a web-based user interface that allows users to generate predefined side-by-side company comparison. So here I have Abdullah Mohammed, Sophie Kelman, and Thomas Zumski. So please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Brian. Before we get started, first thank all of you for joining us for today's presentation. And we particularly wanted to thank Lakshmi Rajendran as well as Shivansh Desai for all their work in putting together this student showcase. We also wanted to thank our advisor, Caio Gasparini, for all his help and direction along the way. There are three members of our team. Abdullah is a programmer and data analyst. I served as the project coordinator and business analyst on the team, and Tomasz as our data engineer. In terms of my background, I have an undergraduate degree in economics from Swarthmore College, as well as an MSc in agricultural and economics from the University of British Columbia. When it comes to online reviews and internet-related activities, sometimes it's like a game of cat and mouse. The challenges of security are real, and the protections that companies are afforded are sometimes more like the old-fashioned castle and moat system, but we have to adapt to this changing and in many ways new battlefront. So when you look at this picture, they're very idyllic seeming, they're relaxing and calming, and I want to ask the question of you: how do you distinguish the real from the fake? Which of these turfs is fake? Can you identify the fake turf? For many of you in the audience, this is a challenge. It is not easy to do. And the problem is similar when it comes to online fake reviews. You go to a website, you go to Google, you go to Yelp to search a company or business you'd like to use. You choose a company because of the excellent reviews of that company's site, but your personal experience is a far cry from the reviews. What was the problem? Oftentimes, companies are besetted by fake reviews. As Curtis Boyd mentioned when he was talking about Objection Co., his company was started as a reputations management company because there was a fake review that was hard to remove but was causing serious damage. Online review fraud is rampant, and as time goes by, black hat astroturfers become more sophisticated, and it's harder to detect them. And the worrying part is that there's no one who is immune to these attacks as cyber criminals continue to saturate the marketplace with fake information. The costs are high and the damages are real. There are challenges: how to detect the fraud, but also how to, once you've detected it, how do you overcome it? How do you eliminate it or identify it or highlight its potential consumers? Objection Code generates scores based on three main criteria. And remember, there's no pre-built API to collect this type of information, so it must be done internally in-house. And they use these three main criteria: the online review content, the profile of the user who has posted that content, as well as the nature or the type of the business that is involved in the review. In order to identify fake reviews, they compile this information and create a series of metrics using natural language processing and other user behavior criteria. What is the architecture of this process? Well, there are scrapers that are put on the web to generate the data to pull the reviews. Those reviews become the source data. It includes not just the review, the business, the reviewer the profiles, the business profiles, and other identifying information such as address, etc. Those are run through an analysis process, and certain features and metrics are generated, which are then used to create a score based on the company. So Objection Co rate companies based on that score. And on the other hand, the transparency company, they continue the process by creating the transparency report that you might kind of notice in red at the top right of the screen. That is what they do. But what about us? What was our role on this project? I will turn this over to Abdullah, our data analyst and programmer.
Thank you, Sophie. My name is Abdullah Muhammad, and I am the data analyst for this project. To give you an overview of the process of this project, the process starts by Objection Co scrape the directories, Google and Yelp and other directories, to scrape the reviews and the profile of the users who wrote these reviews. They do apply several machine learning algorithms, including NLP, in order to identify which review is suspicious. Then they do provide a report, and they store the data in AWS database. And then it comes our part. We use an API to extract the data from their database. We apply several technologies like Plotly, Flask, and Python to clean the data and save them in a new SQL server. Then we do apply all these technologies to serve the visualization through authenticated web application. The technologies that we use for this project are Python, our main programming language. IDEs, we use Jupyter Notebook and Visual Studio Code. We used Flask, AWS, MongoDB, then we moved to SQL Server. And for visualization, we used Plotly. Thank you so much. Now I'll be moving to my colleague, Thomas.
Hi, my name is Thomas Szumski, and I work with Sophie and Abdallah on the project. So just very fast, I'll just introduce the technical side of the project. Starting from the beginning, this is a copy of a PDF file of the reports that used to be sent to individual customers. We were asked to aggregate those reports and create a visualization that would allow customers to compare two different data sets. So now about the coding. Our coding was done in Python. There are two parts of the program. First one is the cleaning of the data. We retrieve data from the API that is supplied by transparency, that after cleaning it, we have only fields or data that we are going to use for our visualization. The second part of the program is the visualization itself. For that, we chose Python as well as the Dash library for our dashboard creation. The reason for that was that we wanted to use only Python as a language. Dash is a very flexible, very rich library that allows creation of interactive dashboards and uses purely dashboards, so you don't have to use JavaScript or any other language. Next, we created, in our application, we created a simple authorization procedure that requires user to enter username and password to get access to the software. So this is the authorization procedure, very simple. We go to the heart of our program. As you see, there are two separate areas. The first area allows us to create a first selection. The users select the state, country, state, city, and the business type. As a result, we create a pie chart that displays number of fake and non-fake review, as well as the total review. To the right, we have a second selection that allows the customers to compare those two. The software is designed in a way that in the future can be expanded. We hope that our customer can work with other groups of students to expand it and enrich this program. As a conclusion, I would like to thank all the people we work with, the Curtis in Transparency in California, as well as our friends in Ukraine, in Lvov, Roman, the technical person that we used to work, and of course, everybody in Georgian College. Thank you very much and have a great day.
So the team encountered a few challenges as the project progressed. However, these have been dealt with, and the company will continue to look at that. And our recommendations at the end were to continue to populate the database.
Thank you to all our soon-to-be BDAT graduates for sharing the work you have done with your respective clients. We can imagine the journey each team had from choosing their project to client consultation and, of course, building the final output. And one key takeaway that I had with that particular student showcase would be students of Georgian College's Big Data Analytics program are capable and ready to handle real-life projects. So for that, I would like to do a shout out to our data analytics project professors, Chris and Kayo, and of course, our mentors and clients for assisting us all throughout this endeavor. Thank you so much, everyone. And for our 85 participants out there, I have a question for you, which you can comment on our chat on the side. If given the chance to choose, which project would you be taking on? So now proceeding on, another perspective of big data will be presented to us through the faculty forum, a roundtable panel discussion from an academic and industry perspectives. We will be joined by professors Chris Dick, Jonathan Gladstone, Richard Lambroff, and last but not the least, Ethan Davis, to discuss their insights of how Big Data Analytics Puzzle Piece program fits into the overall industry jigsaw.
Thank you very much, Janina. We now have the floor for our professors. I must say that we cannot have any other set of people more than this. We are very much in good hands with these four giants. Thanks for coming. I don't know if I should start with a question or you have something to start, Chris.
Well, I'm the program coordinator, as most of you know. If I look at the program as a broad sense, I spoke about this a little earlier. I'm often more inspired every semester with the people that come through. You guys are doing such an amazing job today in this brand new platform, in this new medium that we're working in. I would say it's not easy because there's no training course that says, here's how to do it perfectly. You know, even as instructors, we're always learning, we're always, absorbing new things. And someone says, oh, you should try this thing. And we go off and try that thing. Sometimes we execute really well. Sometimes we don't execute really well. And I often make jokes in class saying, I guarantee if I try this thing, it's going to break. So let's just go ahead and try it, right? And I joke about that. So, it's something that in our business, we're used to seeing things not work perfectly, but we try to execute as best as we can. In this panel, we've got a really great wealth of experience. I've been in the industry for 28 years, I believe now. So it's hard to believe when I look at how things have changed. Jonathan and I were just talking backstage about how the industry has changed and how much we know. And then, of course, I would say how much I don't know. Every time something comes up in class, even students will say something and I think, that's a new one. I've never heard of that. And so we have to go off and think about it and decide whether it's good knowledge or bad knowledge, and it's something that we train ourselves to do over time. Thank you for the introduction there, Bright.
Thank you very much. Before I continue, I would like to mention more than half of the 84 participants here are just seeing Richard for the first time. We have now finally put in a face to this voice. I think Jonathan as well. For me, this is the first time I'm seeing Jonathan.
Usually my background, I have a very nice interactive background, but it is nice to see one of my students, Bright. So thank you, Bright, for the introduction. Do you want me to start now or you have some questions you want to ask me?
It's about generally diversity and inclusion. Given the current state, the entire world now, the world in a global village and in all ramifications, do you still maintain the same old strategy for diversity and inclusion, or you find the need for a new or a heightened, improvement or involvement in considering Georgian admission and students?
Well, pertaining to myself, I think with diversity and inclusion has always been part of the program, even prior to COVID and even after COVID. What I would state about that is that when we look at big data itself as a whole, you look at AI, right? And AI itself stands 1 and 0, basically, right? But when we think about as a community, and I think a lot of you heard this before, but I can't always talk about it and show you as the hand. Remember I mentioned the hand? Where we have 5 different fingers. When you look at that hand itself, they interact with each other by different characteristics. So when we think of ourselves as a group, as a collective group, I always tell you that in your groups, I always tell you that as a group unit, You have unique challenges, unique experiences that you bring together to create effective projects. And I think when you talk about that topic you just mentioned right there, this is where big data is really excelled, because when we look at me and Ethan, I talk about him as communications officers in the Big Data Insights Conference before COVID. I talked about how we were all entrepreneurs, and I still believe we are entrepreneurs in this industry. I really believe that we are growing. The program is growing. I teach at York University, and I teach at another college as well, Durham College. And I can tell you right now, the big data program at Georgian, by far, in my opinion, is far superior than York. I'm not trying to knock them down, or Durham. And the sole reason for that is because you have that live MRP project. You get a live client. Chris works hard to get that team. And a lot of you don't understand that the impact that you make when you do these projects, that you, when you get out in the real world, because I've had a lot of people use me for character reference, whatever it may be, to get jobs, they find that the MRP projects have really helped them be involved and be symbiotic into the industry from those live projects. So that's just my feel on this.
Thank you. Chris, do you want to add to that, or a diverse view?
I certainly can. I would echo what Rick's saying, that you're going through this right now, Bright, where you're interacting with a client and you come off at the beginning thinking, I got this nailed. And then over time, it's like, wait a minute, you mean I have to pivot and I have to do something different because my perfect idea isn't so perfect? This is what we teach the students, and it's something that everybody has to learn. And the only way you do that is by being immersed in it. And I think that is what's made our program so popular. It's the comments and feedback that we come back with that say that where students are saying, I'm very happy that I did that major research project. At the start, when you've got that major research project in the first semester, most people just, it's just this project. But in the second semester is when you really realize the value of it. And that's what we're hoping for every semester. We build partners, and those partners translate into opportunities. Any of those partners that are on that logo list, for example, if you said I went to Georgian College Big Data, it's an easy in. Good opportunities around.
Thank you very much, Ethan. It's been a while. I think we didn't have you for this semester, so it's been nice to have you back.
It's nice to see you.
I want to ask you, considering you are from our understanding and our experience with you, you are very big with the programming part. Do you think that Georgian students are doing enough that sets them ready for the industry with respect to data programming?
It's a good question. I actually had a bit of a conversation with someone during my office hours last night with a couple of my students. And the funny thing is, a lot of times employers don't really know what they're looking for until you can provide it to them. You're searching for these job postings, right? And you'll see this laundry list of requirements for this position, right? There's 30 different programming languages and Spark and Hadoop and everything else. But the reality is nobody has that kind of expertise. And they're not even entirely sure until you start building something for them, which of those technologies they're even going to be using. So at the end of the day, we cover Python, we cover C#, we cover R to an extent, and Rick is, front and center teaching, things like SQL and all of these building these architecture systems. So I would say, they're very well off actually. And if you're looking in the chat over here, Komal was talking about how his life is better now that he doesn't have to do my problem sets. Those problem sets are tough, but they really do teach a lot of the fundamentals of these programmings, and they get you from beginner to solid programmer in only a 4-month time. I think everyone is even past my course, and they get in with Pedram and the artificial intelligence where they expand on all of those skills. I would say, absolutely, that every person who comes out of this program is qualified to do pretty much any analytics job that you can see advertised. Whether or not you get that job is a little bit different, right? Because cold applying to those positions is challenging, but definitely, absolutely, I would say yes.
Okay, thanks. That sounds comforting. Some extra motivation and confidence over there. All right, I'll quickly move to Jonathan. So, Jonathan, I know that statistics itself is as old as the human existence, but I am not sure I can say the same thing about data analytics, right? Even though I know, again, we have experience, data has been traced back into the days, but now how is statistics evolving to support big data analytics?
That's a really good question. Statistics itself is not changing a lot. The mathematics exists. I was taking courses in multivariate statistics as long ago as 1980, 1981. The mathematics has existed. The techniques have existed. What's new is that our machines can apply those techniques so much faster than we can, that they can do things for us in real time that previously would have taken rooms full of people months to do. Two things have grown together. One of them is our ability to collect data electronically. The other one is our ability to process it. It's not surprising that our ability to process the data has lagged our ability to collect it. I found actually two quotes, both of them from the past week, talking about how important data analytics is in industry now. And the first one I saw at the top there, both of these are from Toolbox Tech. The first one is from the DevOps pages, talking about how data analysts, people from IT operations like me, but also people who are fresh out of school like you, are becoming central to our enterprise's successes. And then I saw another one from less than a week ago from the strategy pages, also from Toolbox Tech, talking about data analysts' growing importance in enterprise decision making. And of course, we talk about these things in all of our courses, but they sound like intellectual exercises until you start seeing that out in the industry, this is the reality. The underlying statistics haven't changed. So the things that we teach in BDAT 1005, for example, are techniques that are over 100 years old, but they still apply today. We're still using them today. And what we have to learn to do now, we heard Richard and Chris and Ethan all talking about pivoting. What we have to do is learn to pivot and now really apply these techniques to real life decision making across a much broader range of source data than before.
Thank you. That was very insightful, and again, resetting our mindset towards both concept of statistics and big data analytics. Some of our students want to know what your plan is when incorporating certifications into these programs. For example, the Microsoft, the Oracle, even Salesforce, and the Azure and GCP and the like. It's something that most of us have been asking ourselves, and we believe is a good time to throw it at you directly.
That's a really good one. Our plan right now is to roll these certification opportunities out in the fall to winter 2022. We've just recently closed our relationship with Microsoft, so that's moving forward. What we're doing right now is we're in the proposal stage with our professors to say which certifications they want to implement. So this is very exciting for all of us. What makes it exciting is that for the BDAT students and potentially alumni, we're pushing to have this opportunity extended to recent alumni, where let's say a certification might have originally cost you $500, but we want to roll that opportunity into the program so that it's much less expensive, because we already teach the curriculum. Quite honestly, I've seen so many of our students just go off and do those certifications on their own, and it doesn't take a lot of effort because they already know the curriculum. We have Microsoft, we have Salesforce, we have SAS, IBM cognitive class that we're going to be bringing back into the program in fall. So that's kind of an exciting one too. It's been around for a while, and I'm going to be bringing that one back into one of our programs. I'm missing one certification. One of the things that we were working on was NVIDIA.
AWS?
We've had talks with them over the years, but one of our other programs already does that certification, so we didn't want to have a competing certification program there. So it's definitely an opportunity still, and I know that we have a relationship with AWS on that program side. That would be with our internet security specialist. When we look at the certifications Tableau, that was the other one that we're looking at. So we're also seeing that Tableau is getting some really great traction, and the students that are doing Tableau certification are having no problems doing it because Eli Kane does such a great job with his visualizations class, and all the material is very relevant to those certifications. Good question, though. Very good question.
Thank you. I'd like to mention here that some of the teams that did the MRP, especially the objection code, they would like to thank Gordon Dick, who, although he's not here today, but they express their appreciation of his contribution so far to this entire engagement.
I'd like to echo that. Gord was a real foundation for us over the last 3 years. He's gone on a medical leave, but I would say that people like that who contribute as much as he did alongside of me to develop the program. I have to say, like, without great instructors like the people we have on today, I couldn't do this as well as I do. And it's a testament to the people that we have on our staff, on our faculty that keep the program running. One of the questions there was how much flexibility do instructors have in designing a syllabus? And we give the instructors freedom to do what they choose with that class. And that's the benefit here, because we, as much as I think I know the industry, the instructor knows the class and the instructor knows the content. We hire those instructors because they are very well versed in that content. We all do as best as we can to teach, but with so much breadth of knowledge that comes into the class, we can have people who have zero knowledge to someone who could probably teach the course. Trying to balance out what can be done with those skills in the class can be always challenging.
Chris, I'll piggyback on comments there just for a moment to continue with that. We don't just make stuff up as we go along. We do have a set of approved learning outcomes that we submitted to the Ministry of Education that say, hey, these are what's going to be covered. These are the learning outcomes of each course. This is what the overall program is going to teach. And then there's flexibility within that. It's not like every semester I could just be like, well, you know what? I'm the data programming professor, so I'm going to teach some obscure COBOL language that doesn't apply to real life situations, right? So
you're not teaching that anymore, right?
That that predates me, Chris. So
I'm thinking of Fortran next, so don't worry.
I wanted to add one brief thing to what Ethan was saying. So for those of you, well, everybody is either taking or has taken BDAT 1005 Math for Data Analytics if you're in the program, and you'll be happy to know that actually, although there are multiple instructors teaching that course, we actually work together as a team to make sure that everybody is getting roughly the same material. Certainly you're being taught the same syllabus, even if some of the details may differ, and you're getting basically the same projects and exams. We work together to coordinate to make sure that not only that each individual course is delivered with some degree of similarity, but also that the whole program dovetails. And credit, to be fair, to Chris and Gord for that, because they've been running this ship for many years now.
Thank you very much. I think this rounds it off for us for this section. And I want to thank every one of you, Ethan, Chris, Jonathan, and Richard, and of course, Gordon. We appreciate you for your time. We know what this time means to you.
Thank you for having us.
Really great.
All right, thank you very much once again. We thank the professors for the previous session. And now we are moving to another very interesting section for the spotlight address with InfraClear. We have a team from InfraClear led by the Chief Executive Officer, Grenada Srinivasan, who will be presenting on the topic using natural language processing to drive digital transformation of infrastructure. His team members, Sylvia Kwache. We have Griffin Tapning.
Thank you, Brett. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Giridhar Srinivasan. I am the CEO and one of the co-founders of InfraClear, and we seek to be something like a Bloomberg for infrastructure. I'll briefly introduce myself. I was born in Canada, in Toronto. I grew up in the US and India, and have been working for about 15, 16 years now in the development and financing of infrastructure projects, power, water, ports, roads, in both developed countries and emerging markets. About a year and a half ago, started InfraClear because we thought there's an opportunity to use technology to make a disruptive impact on the way in which we develop, finance, and manage infrastructure projects.
I'm Sylvia Kwache, and my particular expertise is in applying natural language processing and machine learning to legal documents. And so, as you can imagine, infrastructure agreements are very complex documents. One of the ways to speed up finding out what's in them is by using the tools that are available to you, and our tools of choice are NLP and machine learning.
Hi all, I'm Griffin. I'm an undergraduate at Stanford University. I'm very excited about natural language processing, and artificial intelligence. I've been working at InfraClear, and we've been designing some really awesome things that Girdhar is about to talk about.
So first of all, infrastructure is in the news right now because President Joe Biden's plan here down in the United States. More broadly, why should we focus on infrastructure? President Biden is right to focus on it. I know it's a longstanding policy of the government of Canada also to go and develop infrastructure projects. If you look at this map, what is fascinating over here is what you see in yellow here are roads built by the Romans over 2,000 years ago. And they superimpose that with a 2010 nighttime satellite image from space. And what you see here is, those are the lights over here. What you see is wherever the Romans built roads lead to the great cities of today. Because once you build a road, or there's an intersection of a road or a meeting of roads, that's where you had trade, that's where you had commerce, that's where you had, once you had commerce, you had a market, and you had people building homes, building schools. And so there was an agglomeration. And so the great cities of Europe emerged along the roads built by the Romans 2,000 years ago. What's even more shocking, if you look closely at this, is wherever the Romans did not build roads remains dark 2,000 years later. So if you wanted to choose a profession which really had an intergenerational or millennial impact long after we on this video conference leave the earth, infrastructure is definitely a spot. We know we need it. How much are we spending and what more do we need to invest? We're investing about $4 trillion a year in infrastructure, but just to avert a climate crisis by the year 2030, having a 2/3 chance to avert a 2 degrees C rise in temperature, we need to invest about $7 trillion a year. We want to do it. Why can't we invest more? The problem is that 90%, this is the process of developing a project where a government sets policies and then a developer works with a government or a utility or a bank to go and try to develop and finance a project. And then you try to build it. The reality is 90% of the technically viable ideas that are started never get built. 50% of the projects that do get completed get restructured. This is a very time-consuming, painful process, and we estimate there's about $650 billion a year of loss and wastage over here that's just spent during this project cycle, just over here before the first shovel hits the ground. What's the problem? Fundamentally, you have very complex agreements that run thousands of pages that have to be negotiated from scratch. And because there's no global database of how these projects have been structured before, you have to go and put it together from scratch each time. And so if you're dealing with a local or provincial government who doesn't know what these agreements see and they don't know how to judge whether this transaction is fair. So we thought about it and we realized that we can use natural language processing, which Sylvia will talk more about in just a few minutes, to extract key data from these documents and create databases and then use data visualization to make it much easier to develop, structure, finance, and manage projects. The overall architecture of this is that we're taking a lot of semi-structured data, building a database using machine learning and natural language processing, and then building decision-making tools, risk management tools, analytical tools to allow banks and law firms and NGOs and people representing communities and governments and utilities and developers have an empirical basis to make better decisions much faster. There's a lot of products that can be built coming out of this, but this is the overall architecture of what we're trying to build. This is sort of the first product that clients have asked us for. Very simply, they've said, we can't organize and manage our documents. Could you build us a simple document management system to allow us to go and search the text of documents, find out who signed what agreement, and get basic data on the market? And once you have that, you start to extract information like this dashboard so that governments and citizens are no longer confused about how projects should be structured. 10 years ago, I went to West Africa, to Burkina Faso, to go and develop a 20 megawatt solar power project. And the very first question we got asked by the government was, they looked at the non-disclosure agreement, which is one of the first documents you sit and negotiate when you do one of these projects. And they said, we want to use Burkina Faso law as the governing law for this non-disclosure agreement. And I said, no. We're going to use English law or New York law because that's what's always done. And they said, we don't believe you. You're trying to pull the wool over our eyes, trying to go and force us to sign up to laws we don't understand. I don't accept this. And so we spent 2 months going back and forth trying to convince them that what we were saying was fair. But the thing is, every time we sort of pull up another anecdote of another agreement from our own library of agreements, they would look at that and say, you're just pulling examples that suit your convenience. I need data. It took 2 months just to negotiate the governing law clause, 8.5 years to get a solar project in the ground in Burkina Faso. Let's just say this. If it's going to take 8.5 years to develop every solar power project, we don't have time till 2030. We should just quit and pick up and all just move to Mars because Earth has no chance. We have got to find a way to go and develop projects faster. This helps us do it. We're building a primary database to help decision makers improve structuring, to allow us to bring more projects to market very easily, to transform risk management and ultimately make infrastructure a liquid asset class for those of you in the market space, to bring more transparency to this space and just make it easier to go and finance projects in difficult
I think
spaces.
that something really critical to realize is that these legal documents that we're talking about, these contracts between companies and governments that get solar panels in the ground, are extremely complex, but have a template. So we can use NLP and other extraction tools to turn this raw text into super interesting and critical insights that we can use to make very informed decisions later on, expediting that process of negotiation and potentially even making the project more robust to failure. So it's really these extraction techniques that we use on the document that can revolutionize the ability to negotiate in this field. We use mostly, if not all, open source tooling, which is really cool because we're solving a complex problem using tools that are just off the shelf and free to use, like Apache Airflow and Django databases and GraphQL and querying languages, and things that everyone has access to that cost $0. We can harness and use to build very important tooling. I think some of the biggest challenges is how you actually extract the data efficiently and effectively. And for that, we've used a bunch of infrastructure on our own side, tooling like Amazon AWS and a few other really robust structured networking and storage tools that have given us compute and scalability to chunk through potentially thousands and thousands of documents. So the robust open source and publicly available cloud tool sets have been critical.
As you could see from the slide, the process is fairly iterative. And it starts with what the customer wants, because to somebody who is working with NLP like me, the data is just data. Where is the value in the data? So you start with what the customer actually wants. They want to see, let's say, the governing law clause, or they want to see a hardship clause. So you identify those things that they want to see. You look at the structure of how those clauses are constructed, and then apply NLP and ML to go and do the recognition for you. So the first few might be done by an expert and say, okay, this clause here, this is labeled the governing clause. This is labeled the hardship clause. This is labeled the force majeure clause. Identify the structure, extract pieces of information from that structure, and then construct a model that does the work for you. And you do this in several layers so that you get more and more accurate results. This is the general overview of the natural processing pipeline, where you first acquire training data, you apply it towards a learning algorithm, build a model from that learning algorithm, and then look at your metrics and keep doing that until you have something that you're satisfied with. And then you start applying it towards real documents. That's your real input. So here's an example. As a first pass, you might just set a rule that says, if there is the word law in a sentence or various configurations of law, like maybe legislation, regulation, you're going to pull that. So that would give you a lot of pieces of data. Your answer is going to be in the data that you pull up, but the precision is going to be very poor because it will pull up all sorts of junk. And so the first step is to separate the junk from what you actually want. So the next step, you might say, now that I have these sentences, how do I generate more features? So then you're looking at linguistic features of the sentences that you've pulled up, the parts of speech tag. You can recognize entities. You can look at the co-occurrence of words together that might give you a clue. So all those tricks of natural language become features that you can apply towards building a model that would recognize this automatically for you. In considering the context for the sentences, instead of maybe just doing a simple search for the word law, you can look at noun phrases that contain the word law, not simply just the word law or regulation. You could look at various forms of the word law. You could look at verbs such as govern, interpret. And then you can also say, my sentence needs to include a geopolitical entity. With just that simple set of rules, that just gives you much, much more accuracy than just doing a simple string search. You can do much more. I'm just talking about this at the very basic level using rules. One thing to keep in mind when you are analyzing legal documents is that the structure, sometimes even white space, is very, very important to the interpretation of the content of the legal document. The two examples that you could see on the slide where you have a comma either before the word promote or after the word promote gives different meaning to the clause that you're looking at. So the first one is a request. It's non-binding. Well, yes, if you have time, do promote. But the second one is an obligation. And so that's a piece of data that you would want to surface for the client, for instance, that you have these obligations in your contract. The typical ways that you would process ordinary natural language, some of it might not be applicable to legal documents. You have to keep an awareness of these things. The first two clauses that we started out with, you can very clearly see after running through our model that one of them is not a governing law clause, even though it contains a geopolitical entity like Indiana and it contains the word law, whereas the second is, because it has everything that we wanted in the right configuration. Instead of a human sitting down, going through a number of contracts and pulling out the jurisdictions, you could just run a batch of documents through and you're guaranteed pretty much 98% accuracy. And there's always going to be a human in the loop. We are not proposing to replace lawyers who analyze these contracts. The subject matter expert can go back in the loop and say, yes, you got this right, or no, you didn't quite get this right. And all that information we could feed back into our model to improve it even further. You know, at the end of the day, you run your contract through an NLP model, get like a summary sheet of the most important components of the contract, or you can aggregate the various pieces from different contracts and come up with some statistics to show on a dashboard and whatnot.
Thank you so much. That was quite insightful, and I'm very sure my colleagues also are very excited about that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
To formally close this year's Big Data Insights Conference, I would like to invite Chris Dick on the screen for his closing remarks.
Thank you to everyone who attended today. It's been a fantastic day. I've heard in conversations outside of our sessions that things are going well and they really enjoy the speakers and the event. Special thank you to everyone who supported the event today. Sophie, very well done. Bright, Janina, Osahan, Lakshmi. I'm probably forgetting one or two names, but thank you so much for all the great work you've done. It was just a great day and very entertaining for me. It's something I look forward to every semester. Have a great night.